All right, in our last session, we laid all that important groundwork for our AI management system. Now it's time to get our hands dirty. We're moving from theory to practice, and we're going to tackle two of the biggest hurdles in AI governance. How do we actually measure the impact of our AI systems on the real world? And how do we manage the entire life cycle of that AI, from just a spark of an idea to a fully deployed system? Let's dive in.
So here's the game plan. First, we'll talk about what it really means to go from planning to actually doing. Then we'll dive deep into AI impact assessments, what they are and why they're so critical. After that, we'll unpack the AI lifecycle, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of building, testing, and deploying these systems. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see how these pieces create AI that we can actually trust. Okay, so if you're going to be a developer, a project manager, or really anyone involved in building AI, this is where the rubber meets the road. We've talked about the big picture policies and resources. Now it's time to talk about how you actually build AI that lives up to all those ideals.
And this right here is a total mindset shift. In the past, the main question was always, how could this risk hurt our bottom line? But with AI, that's just not going to cut it anymore. ISO 42001 forces us to ask a much bigger, much more important question. How will our AI impact real people, real communities, and the world around us?
This is exactly where Annex B5 comes in. It is all about assessing the impact of AI systems. I want you to imagine you're standing at the edge of a perfectly still pond. Every AI system you create is like a stone you toss into that water. It's going to make ripples, right? And those ripples can spread far and wide. Annex B5 is basically your guide to understanding and measuring the true size and impact of those ripples.
And listen, this isn't some one-and-done checklist you just tick off and forget about. No way. It's an ongoing process that looks at the potential consequences of your AI throughout its entire life. And it's not just about how you hope people will use your system. You also have to think about how people could misuse it and the potential harm that could cause.
What's so powerful about this is just how comprehensive it is. You're not just looking at the impact on some average user. You have to consider the impact on specific individuals, like an AI unfairly denying someone a loan. You have to look at vulnerable groups and think about whether your system performs worse for certain demographics. You're looking at everything from fairness and bias to safety. You even have to consider the environmental impact. I mean, think about the massive amount of energy it takes to train a large language model. That's a real-world impact that has to be part of your assessment. Let's make this super concrete. Imagine our Agentic GenBI platform is running a company's entire supply chain. It's making autonomous decisions, trying to get products to customers as efficiently as possible. But what if the AI learns some bias from the data and decides it's more efficient to just stop delivering to a certain neighborhood, maybe a rural or a low-income area? Just like that, an entire community could be cut off from essential goods. That is a huge unintended consequence, and it's exactly the kind of thing you have to anticipate and plan for with these assessments. So we know why we need to be so careful when we build AI. Now, let's talk about how we actually do it. And that brings us to Annex B.6 and the AI system lifecycle. And as you'll see, this is not a straight line from start to finish. It's a continuous, never-ending loop.
This slide just nails the fundamental shift in how we have to think about building software. For a long, long time, it was a linear process. You design it, you build it, you ship it, and you move on to the next thing. But AI is a completely different beast. An AI model is almost like a living thing that can change and evolve over time. And that's why the AI lifecycle is a continuous loop of development, deployment, and constant monitoring.
Annex B6 gives us a fantastic roadmap for managing every single step of this process. It all starts with defining your requirements. What exactly do you want this AI to do? Then you have to verify and validate that it actually does what you intended. After that, you deploy it into the real world. And once it's live, you have to constantly monitor it to make sure it's still performing the way it's supposed to. And the standard gets incredibly specific here, which is great. Before a single line of code is written, you have to document exactly why you're building this AI and what you consider to be acceptable performance. Let's go back to our Agentic GenBI system that sends out business alerts. What's an acceptable rate of false positives? Is it 1 in 100? 1 in 1,000? That number has to be decided on and documented before you even start building. Because if you don't know what success looks like, you'll never know if you've achieved it. Now that we have that high-level view of the AI lifecycle, let's zoom in and take a closer look at 3 of the most critical stages: building, testing, and deploying your AI system. This brings us to a crucial step:
verification and validation, or V&V for short. This is where you formally test your AI to make sure it's reliable and safe. But there's another equally important piece to this puzzle. You have to make sure that people can actually understand the AI's output. It's not enough for the AI to be right, people have to be able to understand why it's right.
This quote just says it all. If our Agentic GenBI dashboard flashes a critical warning about profit margins, but the manager looking at it has absolutely no idea why the AI made that forecast, the system has failed, period. Explainability isn't some nice-to-have feature. It's a core function that you have to test just like any other piece of code. Okay, so once it's validated, we get to deployment. Annex B.6 points out a really common pitfall here. AI is often developed in one environment, like your local server, but then it's deployed in a completely different one, like a live Azure cloud. Your deployment plan has to account for these differences to make sure the system performs as expected out in the real world.
So you've built your AI, you've tested it, and you've deployed it. You're done, right? Nope, not even close. Because once your AI is out in the real world, it's going to encounter something called data drift. See, the world is constantly changing. Customer preferences shift, new trends pop up, and the data that your AI is seeing in the wild starts to look different from the data it was trained on. And when that happens, the model's performance will start to decline.
And this is exactly why you can never take your eye off the ball. Your data pipeline is the lifeblood of your AI system. If the data going in is corrupted or biased, the decisions coming out are going to be too. That's why the standard requires you to constantly monitor your AI's performance. That way, you can catch data drift as it's happening and either retrain your model with fresh data or just take it offline before it causes any harm.
Okay, wow. So we have covered a ton of ground. We've talked about the importance of assessing the real-world impact of your AI, and we've walked through the entire AI lifecycle, from conception all the way to retirement. But what's the point of all this? What's the big payoff?
Here it is. This is the key takeaway. By formally assessing the human impacts, that's the why from Annex B.5, and rigorously controlling every single phase of that development loop, that's the how from Annex B.6, you build a system that is safe, effective, and fully accountable to the people it serves. That's how you get to trustworthy AI. And so I'll leave you with this final question to think about. As you go out and build the next generation of AI, are you just building code? Or are you building a foundation of ethics and accountability into every single thing you create? The choice is yours.